you're not playing Bellwright co-op with your friends, surviving can be really difficult, so it's well worth having an army to help you out. Combat in this game is pretty tricky. You have to learn to block from various different directions and attack enemies. Often there's more of them than there are of you, so it can be a problem. What you can do though is build a little army, call it in and help them destroy the enemies you're trying to deal with, whether that's bandits or brigands, and whether they're easy enemies or a bit harder. Now, having an army can be really beneficial in a number of ways. I want to show you some tips to get the best out of your army, make them more efficient fighting machines, and make them more deadly so that they can do most of the work and you can reap the benefits of destroying the local enemies. So, I'm going to start with some tips on how to do that. I'm assuming you know how to recruit villagers already, and you've already built up a fairly decent village by doing quests and then recruiting villagers from your local villages. Now these start with Hardine and Padstow, and those are the easiest ones to recruit from. All you need to do is complete various different quests, but there are other bonus things that you can do which will help as well. If you speak to the village elder, you can sell him things you've found that include wolf fangs and old coins. This will boost your reputation with that village and help you gain some more traction with them to be able to recruit more villagers from there. Another thing you can do a bit later on is to fight the brigands. So these are armed mercenaries inside the little villages, which are basically holding the village hostage. You can take these on and finish them off by destroying the brigands in that village and then helping to free the village. However, it is not easy. So I would recommend getting a friend to help you, or maybe a small army of your own early on, and then getting on top of a high point like a building or somewhere where the brigands can't access, and then shooting them from above. Now, this takes a little bit of time to get to. You're better off starting with the quests, but if you can take out the brigands, you can then put a tower down in the village and improve your reputation even further with that, freeing the village from the enslavement of these brigands, which then allows you to recruit more high-level villagers to your village and build your little army up. Getting rid of the brigands also allows you not only to put the tower down, but also other things as well. So there are other things that you can do once you've destroyed the brigands, although you do need to bear in mind that you will have roaming bands of brigands to deal with as well. But the building list includes the village shrine, which you can research from your own main village hall. The village shrine can then be placed in a friendly village, which is neutral, so where you've neutralized the brigands, and you can craft it with just 15 crude stone, which makes it really easy to do. Now, when you do this and craft it, you increase your trust with that local village by 75. You can boost this over and over, and you can repeat this process, so you can basically build multiples of these shrines in a nearby village, and you can keep doing it. And because it's only 15 crude stone, it's really easy to craft. You can probably hold 30 crude stone in your inventory and in a small bag relatively easily, which means you can quickly craft loads of these and boost up your trust with the local village ridiculously high to the point of maxing it out really quickly and really easily once you've dealt with the brigands. Doing this is beneficial because then it lets you recruit people like the apprentices and the higher level villagers that have better stats. You can then put into your own army, and you can then use the army against other bandits and to go out into the world and explore a bit more into the more dangerous areas. So it's worth doing those few things, but these village shrines are just overpowered, so they're well worth building. Obviously, you've been recruiting villagers for a while now, and you're trying to get even better ones. One way to do this is to talk to someone in each of the local villages. You can see the bookseller, for example. When you complete quests or kill bandits, you often find books, but you can also purchase them from these chaps. And these books can be very handy because they not only help to improve your own skills if you read them, but you can then also go and give them to the relevant villagers in your village as well. Now, you can obviously use them for various different things. You can find some, for example, for crafting purposes or harvesting, let's say. You can see here, we can look at the attributes of the villagers. We can see this one's doing harvesting and is good at it, so we want to boost the harvesting abilities up because they're working in the farm. But obviously, logically, what you want to do is to focus on giving them books to read by going to your inventory, right-clicking, and then clicking read when you've inspected them, so you can see the process for it here. You want to focus on things like strength, shields, and one-handed weapons and agility if you want to use these guys for fighting. And obviously you want to throw in a dose of the abilities for crafting, research, and other things as well when they're helping you around the village. But buy loads of these books, or get them when you find them, and try and use them on the villagers. Now, some of the higher level books might not be able to be used on certain level villagers, so early on in the game you can't always use them, but it's worth revisiting them and keep doing it so that you can teach them, basically get them to read up on these things. They can learn in the same way you can, and they're going to get better over time. Next thing to do is to basically craft as many high level weapons and gear as you can. So find the best things that you can craft. Let's say, for example, a better sword and a better axe. And I'd also recommend doing bows and shields. And you want to think about other gear too. So any of the clothing items that you make for yourself, so studded shirts or improved trousers and a hood and things like that, build those for the villagers as well. And you can get the villagers to do this for you so you can make the process easier, but then you can equip them. So if you give them a bag, as a basic example, they then have the ability to carry more things, which means they're better villagers and they can be more useful. But obviously if you equip them with better shoes and food and a shield and a weapon and better armor, then they're going to be better in combat as well. It's worth noting that you can basically do this across all your villages, and you should, and the more people you recruit, the more stuff you're going to need to produce to give to them, which obviously becomes a bit of a chore, and you need to keep on top of upgrading them. But doing so will then make sure that your army is ready to fight. You'll notice that I'm also giving them a lot of food, and you'll see why in a second. Now, getting food I've done a video on separately, but you need to make sure you've got a lot of it, especially as your village starts to grow. You can set certain villagers to go harvesting for food, foraging for it, and hunting. You can also get cabins to do this, or you can go and get meat yourself, or a combination of those things. But you need to make sure your villagers are well fed and there's plenty of food about. I'd recommend putting food on smoking racks and smoking that meat up, because that will take less time to get more meat done, and it's easier to produce because you only need one set of sticks for it. Whereas the basic campfires are a bit more tricky. They only take 4 bits of wood, but they only take 4 bits of meat, so you can't produce quite so much. But you do need to make sure you've got food. Food is actually one of the most important things for your army, surprisingly, especially if you're going out a long way to deal with a lot of enemies. So I'd recommend, if you want to use an army to go and fight, make sure you do it so that the food's ready first thing in the morning when they wake up. If the food's ready, what you want to do is hit I to bring up your inventory, and then click on army, and then click add to squad, and then click at the little button here, and then basically you have to click on each of the people down here so you can select them and tell them to come along. So you'd actually click on here, but what you can see is there's a little stomach symbol basically against every single person in my camp at the minute, which means they won't come with me until they're fed. So this is actually a bit of a problem, and you can't actually use an army right now. Now, an alternative way to do it is to click call to arms, and you can then turn everybody into a armed person. But then you'll see on the left hand side everyone's stopping following you and is searching for food. So although it said there was an army, there now isn't, and nobody is actually ready for battle. And that's because none of this food is ready. It is still cooking, but it's not actually ready to go just yet. Now it's first thing in the morning. You'll see everybody goes straight for the food. They should hopefully grab themselves some food from the fire and take the food that's ready to go. And if they don't, you might have to cook some more and then stock up yourself and make sure your inventory's got food on it. You have to be careful also that the food hasn't got burnt along the way, which is also an issue. Then what you can do is press I, go to the army, add squad, click on that, and then add everybody that you want to be part of your army. And you can see, hopefully, that you should be able to recruit all of the people and have a nice substantial army to come with you. What you'll notice immediately in the top right is there is a food indicator on the people there, and you can actually see it starts to complain about some of them not having enough food. You can look through and see which ones haven't got food here or have only got a little bit of it, and if they run low on food, they will just abandon you in the middle of the battle, which is obviously less than ideal. Meat is preferable, to make sure that people are well fed. However, if you have to, you can resort to just giving them mushrooms and berries. Feeding them this way while you're out and about. I would recommend giving them food and ensuring that each of them has at least 2 bits of food. Ideally, you want to give them 3 bits of different food if you can, to make sure that they're well stocked up, because like you, they get the bonuses from the various different food types with more health and more stamina and other abilities as well. With an army following, then just find your target, let's say a bandit camp, and you can draw them out early by firing arrows into their base and then getting them to come out to fight you. You can then just keep pressing Q to get the companions to follow you, and then press R to either get them to stop next to you or to charge in and start fighting. I find it's handy to try and thin out the enemies with some arrows first before they get close, and then let your army go in. You will notice a few of them have dropped and have been injured during this process, but not to worry, because they will respawn the next day, so as soon as the day starts again, your villagers will be fine, whereas these bandits will all be dead. If you clear out a bandit camp with your army, you can claim it by taking the flag, unless it says it's already claimed, and then the bandits will no longer respawn there. When you've cleared out the bandit camp, you'll usually find there's a couple of loot boxes knocking around as well, so you can loot 2 loot boxes and all the bodies of the bandits. Chances are you'll probably end up with your inventory full. What I like to do here, and why it's useful for your members to have a bag, is you can just pass off a lot of the stuff to them. Obviously giving them any food you find, bandaging them up, but also giving them other loot things, like you can see, like hide and straps, for example. You can just give it to your companions and they will take it back to the base once you've finished and you've disbanded the squad. Because at the end of this, you basically repeat the process of opening up the army inventory section and then clicking the X and clicking to send your squad members back to base as workers, because you want to return them as workers. The other thing you'll find, obviously, is money in this process, which means you can buy more books. And if you're lucky, some of the bandits might have dropped some books, or you might have found them in the stash boxes in the bandit camps. You can naturally use those books by just getting the people that are surviving to read them, and that will then improve their stats further when you use them again. Now, it's worth noting that if you read a book and you die, it resets your progress on that, so it's actually not worth doing. I don't know if that same logic applies to companions. It probably does, so I wouldn't recommend getting them to read a book and then getting them to carry on fighting, because if they die, that book's then gone to waste. However, it is one way to free up space in your inventory and to keep them going and improving as you go. Hopefully some helpful tips for growing your army.